Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining me today at Armstrong Acting Studios for our Instagram Live with Jon McLaren, who will be joining us in just 1 second. I'm just going to be inviting him here. So, if you are settling in, we are going to be talking what you need to audition, the kind of training that goes into a video game audition, and we'll be hearing about Jon's personal journey as a video game actor as well as an on-camera actor. So we're just waiting for him to jump on. I can start by just talking about myself. I'm Susanna Fournier. I'm the artistic director at Armstrong Acting Studios, where I have taught every level of on-camera acting. So we are a studio dedicated to on-screen performance, and we have classes at every level from the absolute beginner to master classes, which are populated by some of Toronto's working actors. So I've been at the studio for 7, almost 8 years now. And it's my privilege to be talking with Jon today and to get everything going today for our upcoming video game workshop. So I'm just letting Jon into the live, just some technical stuff. So he should be joining us in just a moment. Here he is. Hey, Jon.
Hi.
How's
What's
it
up?
going?
I'm good. How are
I'm
you?
so good. It's so nice to be talking with you today.
You as well. How
I'm
are you?
good. It's getting, I feel that summer heat is coming back. So
So hot.
having listening or access to
Like
it.
face melting on some days.
Yeah, face melting. I mean, I don't want to jump right ahead to what, like, how hot is it in a motion capture suit, but we will get to that, and that is a question I do.
Oh, hot.
All right. So I just did a little intro of myself and of the acting studio, but everyone joining today, this is Jon McLaren. I had the immense pleasure of working with Jon when we both appeared in Titans as some very, very awesome state troopers about to get married and viciously murdered by Lady Vic after our engagement in a very fun scene shot on a very cold day a couple years ago now.
Yeah. I think I got a knife. I got a knife through the back, and I think you got one through your hand or something.
My hand, and then just a proper gutting in my
Yeah. I mean, if you're gonna gut someone, do it
yeah
right.
day. But Jon is an extremely well-known actor. You may know him from recurring roles as Jim McKenney on Borhe, Journey of a Legend, Jesse Stanton on Heartland, and you've also voiced a ton of characters, including various characters in Ubisoft's Smash video game series Far Cry, which we will definitely be talking about today. You've been on Blood and Treasure, House at the End of the Street, Private Eyes, Good Witch. I mean, you've worked for every major network we've got going here. So
Trying to.
trying to
Trying to.
also work in multiple genres, which is a testament to your skill and range as an actor. And as much as we could get into all of your film credits, we want to specialize today on your experience with video games. So I definitely cannot forget the fact that you starred as Star-Lord in
Yes.
Guardians of the Galaxy, which is a huge franchise and a critically acclaimed award-winning game, just sort of like smashed through multiple years of awards, truly, which is incredible. So we definitely want to get into that. Is there anything
Absolutely.
you'd like our listeners to know about yourself before we jump into kind of your journey?
No, I mean, you just kind of covered my entire career in a couple of seconds. So I think we're good. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to dive in and answer any questions anybody might have about the not only acting but the video game space as well. And yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready for it all.
But like, let's just dive in, right? Like, how did you go from, just an auditioning actor, film and
Mhm.
television, bulking up that way, to oh, I'm the lead of Guardians of the Galaxy, I'm playing Star-Lord. Like, how did you break into the video game market? It's a huge market. That's something you always wanted to do, or talk to me about how that came to be.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it goes back to having representation and having an agent that's, believes in you and, wants to put you out there. I mean, I went out of my way to take some voice classes, to take some, that are specific to animation, video games, stuff like that. So I sought out that kind of coaching. And then it came down to my agent pushing me for different roles. And I grew up playing. I still play video games. I mean, I stream on a platform called Twitch, and I
Mhm.
just I love the space. I love it so much, and so I pushed my agent to start sending me out for video games and animation because I really do enjoy it. So that's kind of how it started for me. It was just kind of preparing myself in terms of what do I need to know to audition for these things, and then
Yeah.
pressing my agent to get me in the rooms.
I think that's awesome, taking that initiative to identify, not just the thing that I love about the game space and about games is the world building and the genres and
Yeah,
the size and scope of these narratives, right? We're talking outer space, we're talking fantasy, we're talking demons,
yeah,
we're huge narratives, a lot of skill based, fighting,
yeah,
magic systems. So I think what's really key is that you identified something specifically that you were passionate about in terms of performance,
yeah,
and identifying as well, oh yeah, I'm going to need some auxiliary voice training.
yeah,
I might need, if I always say to actors, if you really want to work in action as a genre, like, are you taking fight skill? Like, are you taking fight combat? Are you taking martial?
yeah.
Um, but what are the auxiliary skills that are going to aid you as a performer and give you that competitive edge? So that if it's between you and somebody else, but you
Yeah.
have voice technique, your voice is leading that audition, they're going to go with you.
Yeah, you
So
kind of got to dive in, right? Like it's no different than getting into film and TV. You kind of have to become a child of cinema. You have to watch the movies. You have to watch the shows. You have to do your research. At the if you to bring it to a basic level, you gotta live and breathe it, right? You gotta be in class. You gotta be learning all the time, and it never ends. Whether it's film, TV, voice, theater, video games, it doesn't audio. It doesn't matter. Like styles of each medium change over
all the
time, so you gotta focus and you gotta stay in it, right?
So when, let's say, okay, so you've taken some extra voice work, and then you get the breakdown, let's say, for Guardians of the Galaxy, and you don't know it's Guardians of the Galaxy. Video games are always a big secret, and I think that's really cool because this is a truly global market
Yeah.
that is, in some ways rivaling, in some ways surpassing the reach of Hollywood projects in terms of budget and audience.
Mhm.
So can you talk to me about when you get a video game audition, a breakdown? What is required of you as the performer? Like what exactly are you putting into your materials for an
Yeah.
audition?
I mean, and to that point, it can be very tough because it's video games are the most guarded audition wise that I think I've ever seen. Like you do not get to know the project. You do not get to know what the character is. Sometimes they don't give you anything at all other than a very generic like here, we want this character to be charming.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Charming in the Wild West.
Yeah, it's just yeah, charming. Where are we in space? Are we in the Wild West? You don't know. So, you just this is where the creative side kind of comes in, and you just kind of have to create what you think is right in terms of like deliverables. They always want to, if it's interesting the video game space because it's not always just mocap or performance capture, I should say. It's sometimes it is only voice. So sometimes the deliverable is simply just a voice audition, and you'll be doing dialogue. You'll be doing things. They're called barks or onos,
Yep.
which are two different things. If it is a full performance capture situation, then you'll be putting yourself on tape like you would for film and TV, albeit because it is involving motion. You want to make sure you're doing the audition in a certain way, because they need to see your movement, they need to see your body, they need to see how you think the character should act and move, and
Hmm.
like Guardians is an example. Star Lord moves very different than Groot, who is a giant, massive, walking, talking. Well, I'll say talking loosely. He says three words, but tree.
Tree.
How does a tree move when it's living, when
Very
it's somewhat humanoid? You know what I mean? So there's a bunch of different deliverables that are very different from film and TV auditions that you probably should know about
distinct.
and be aware of when you are auditioning
So
for video games.
something that jumps out to me is this added element of movement and physical storytelling with body
Mm.
language, right? When classic, TV frame is, kind of what we're living in
Yeah,
now, like this very close up, we're very in the thought activity. And then we get something a little more heightened, a little more theatrical,
yeah.
a little more full body, like you're on stage. And I'm wondering, um, did it surprise you actually the kind of like the the bigness or the big choices you could make physically or that you needed to make when you were cast as Star Lord and you were on set and you were actually doing the performance? Like, what was the learning curve there in terms of acting with your whole body?
Yeah, and I think you nailed it on the head. Like, it is kind of the perfect blend of theater and film. Like, it really is. Like, and again, it comes down to the character. Like, if you're playing a humanoid character like Star Lord, I mean, you can be a little bit bigger, but you don't want to be too over the top because humans don't naturally just flail all over the place. But you do have to be aware of like what it's a heightened awareness of how you are using your body and how, because really, unlike the cinematic framing you see in film and television, like where it's super tight, when you're in that suit, they're literally capturing data for your entire body, head to toe. So you need to you need to make choices as to how this character is going to move. If you're in a I don't know, if you're in a game like a Final Fantasy game and they've got, an 8 to 10 foot long sword that probably weighs 100 pounds, you're not gonna be whipping it all around. There's gonna be
Yeah,
some
it's not
physical, yeah, there's gonna be some physical weight to it. Then you have to be able to portray that because in real life, when you're shooting in the volume, you don't have 100 foot pound sword that you're whipping around.
right.
So you have to train your body to move and to feel the weight of objects and the world around you because really it's just a giant stage. It's called a volume, but it's a giant stage,
Right.
and you have to bring it to life through your movement and through your voice.
Right. So we've got some video game kind of specific lingo here. We've got the volume, which we could say is set, stage, sound stage.
Set
All the,
stage. Yep, yep,
you're wearing the
yep.
suit. You're wearing performance capture suit
Mhm.
with um, for folks who have maybe not seen a picture, can you tell me about the suit?
It's tight.
From my
Picture a giant, uh, dare I say, Velcro spandex. Like it's a bodysuit, is what it is. It's a bodysuit,
body.
and you've got the little balls all over. I think there's, oh man, what's the number? 58,
Wow.
60. I think different studios do it differently, but you're essentially, you've got balls at every single joint in your body to cover movement, so front and back, and they're all over the place. You've got your head cam on, which also has motion capture balls on it, and
Right.
we can go into detail in class about how that all works. But you've got a camera strapped to your face with a light, and yeah, it's a very humbling suit to wear, but you get used to it pretty quick. It's basically a second skin.
Second skin.
Yeah,
That's what I was thinking. And yeah,
yeah.
just joining us, this live is in advance of our in-studio workshop featuring Jon McLaren, who will be guiding our participants through a video game audition, giving you direct feedback on your work, going into more detail about some of the stuff we are talking here today. So it will be a very insider deep dive into the world of auditioning for video games. July 30th, you can click on Armstrong to sign up. So you're wearing this second skin, this suit that, you know, from afar, it's a bit comical. You're in this volume. How much imaginative work are you doing as the performer to, one, not see your fellow performers wearing the suit, to put yourself into the imagined reality of the landscape, the situation?
All of it. It's all like there's nothing else in that space. Now I will say that they do bring in, you know, you can bring in chairs and stuff like that. For example, on Guardians, if we're sitting in the Milano, which is the ship that Star-Lord's ship, you know, they would bring in literally desk chairs for us to sit in, and they would no joke, like it's very.
Don't just have
It's
to
not glamorous like film and TV. There's no big, you know, set that you're on. There's no green screens. It's just
right.
they brought in the chairs and they spaced them out appropriately based on, you know, the models that they were building in engine. And what's another good example? Or we had scaffolding for. There's a scene where Star-Lord, you know, jumps off of a bridge and he lands on the ship and he's holding onto the ship, but like there's no ship. It was literally a yellow.
Wow.
Beat up scaffolding that I was just hanging off of and
So you're
swinging my body side to side. It's very basic, but you have to create this world around you. And we were lucky. If you have a great director, they're able to kind of, you know, we sometimes would get pre conceptualized work of the space that we're in. It's very, very basic, almost like storyboarded, yeah, exactly, of the space, so we can kind of get an idea of where things are and what things are. Or they'll put placeholders so you can, you know, you're not walking through a table or something like that. If there's some, no, it is though. Like when you're on film and TV, you have a set and, you know, you block everything out and the things are physically there. But when you're just building this digital world, you have to be cognizant of sometimes, depending on the scene, of where you're moving and what you're doing. And oftentimes they'll just tape off stuff. Don't walk through that zone, or yeah.
So I love this. Like the task of the actor in a video game is not, so when you're like fully occupying like the created physicality of your character, right? Whether you're human or some kind of alien or a tree. So you've got to maintain that reality, that imagined reality in the body, and then you also have to create and maintain the set, the environment, or fellow characters, and emotional stakes of the scene.
Yep. Oh yeah, it's a juggling act. There's so many different aspects that you have to be aware of. Something as simple as walking through a door for Star-Lord. He's a human. He just walks through the door. For Groot, there's no door when we're filming, but he had to physically, like,
right.
Well, he's like 8, 9, 10 feet tall, so he had to physically move his body sometimes while delivering lines, and it's a bit of a juggling act, but it's so much fun. I can't.
I love that. I mean, I've had some experience like green screening as an actor, right? And you're like, okay, I'm imagining all of the components that they're going to CGI in later, or all this, and the focus that takes to just really invest, right? Because sometimes, you know, it can be like, it's hard to gauge like what is the scale of the emotional stakes, right? Especially when you don't have that thing coming to scare you, or you don't have that combatant coming right at you know, imagine this force that you are afraid of, or that you are. So that is an amazing, I think, skill to be able to hold that imagination, commit to it, track it. As you're on, so you're doing all that, are they capturing your vocal performance at the same time, or is that something they're going to go in and dub?
It depends on it depends on how. There's so many different ways that they they shoot these games. But if you're doing full performance basically means you're head to toe tracked body, facial movements, and voice all at once. So in those situations, yes, they're capturing your voice all at the same time. There are scenes where even if you're on a gig that is full performance, there are some situations in the game where they'll just bring you into a vocal booth, and you'll be in the vocal booth by yourself and doing lines one on one, which is kind of the traditional way to do it. But you know, a lot of companies go the full performance route because it's so much. It's a lot easier. We were very lucky on Guardians. It's a lot easier to actually be acting out a scene when the person is right across from you and you
Yeah.
have that connection that's live and real and organic versus going into a vocal booth where, okay, say this line three different ways, and then you're out, the next person is, and then we'll try to stitch it all together and make it make sense in a conversational. There's something you lose by not having that human interactive touch.
Well, and I wonder too if because I grew up playing games and I was there kind of for the birth of gaming as we saw, and
Mhm.
then so much more cinematic. And like my take on that is games are. I remember when Final Fantasy VII came out, and it was the first time I'd seen a game where there were these huge storytelling sections. Like you'd arrive at a moment in the game, and the narrative would take over, and it was. I remember the graphics for that were kind of like mind blowing in terms of the CGI and the acting in the game,
Mhm.
and these sequences that are narrative, like quite
Yeah.
long. I mean, Guardians was nominated for so many best narrative of the game. So
Yeah.
I kind of see it as we're moving to this place where you know movies and games are kind of doing this, and
100%.
and
100%.
so I think we do need that sense of that the acting is now being like really, it's a really exciting performance space. And we're starting, I mean, your performance as Star-Lord was nominated. We're seeing, I think of a show too, like The Last of Us, right? Like we're seeing movies become games and games become miniseries.
Yeah.
Like they are,
Yeah, it's at the level now where it's just the technology has come so far that you're able to create these insanely immersive
yeah.
um, worlds. The storytelling it's incredible. I mean, in comparison to a film or TV show where, you'll sit down and watch a film for, 2 hours or maybe a limited series for 8 episodes, 8 hours. Now you're seeing games that can just do so much more in the world, in terms of world building, where you've got games that are like 20, 30 hours. In some cases, if you look at, persistent online worlds, like hundreds of hours of story in there. It's like reading an incredible book. Like you immerse yourself so much more in 20 hours than you ever could in a 2 hour film. And that's
And
not a knock on the medium, they're just different mediums, but like it's exploded so much. And you hit it on the head. Like you got shows like The Last of Us. If you ever play those games, they're incredible. Fallout is another adaptation that just released. It's unreal. It's so good. The Witcher is another one, which is
yeah.
fantastic. You're going to see more and more. I believe they're adapting like God of War, which is going to be
Oh, that's going to be epic.
insane. It's going to be insane. But yeah, you're seeing it more and more now, and video games have now, I believe, surpassed like film and TV and theatrical.
Yeah.
It's so much bigger than I think a lot of people realize.
I think it's going to become so much bigger too, especially in terms of where we're heading with augmented reality and
Oh yeah.
VR. And, I think there is that difference of when you are the player, either yourself solo or you're playing online with your friends. I mean, so many of my family members have met their best friends, their spouses, through
Yeah.
gaming, through community. And
Yeah.
it's an incredible, like, emancipatory feeling, right?
Yeah.
Like you jump into this world and yeah, it's escapism, but also you're challenging yourself. You're the one pushing through and advancing the story. So I think there's so many amazing things where video games bring together the best of cinema, the best of gameplay, the best of like challenge and determination.
Yeah.
Jumping over to Far Cry.
Yeah.
Far Cry was for you? You've been voicing characters in the Far Cry series. Did before Guardians? Did that come after? What's different?
That was before Guardians, so I had the opportunity to do Far Cry 3 was the first time I ever got to work on a video game, and it was actually just a demo piece for this trade show that's called E3, which no longer exists, unfortunately. Rest in peace, E3. I love you. I miss you. But I remember I went in and just did some voice work for a promotional trailer they were doing for Far Cry 3. I don't even think it ended up in the game. And then Far Cry 5, which was before Guardians, I got to go in and I got to do a whole bunch of characters. They're called NPCs that exist around the world of Far Cry. And so if you play that game, you might hear me in multiple areas in that game, either probably shooting at you or being lit on
Coming.
fire.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and then after that came Guardians, which was so blessed to still blows my mind that I landed that. But and then that was a full, oh man, probably almost a 4 year experience, start to finish.
Ah,
Yeah, from audition to when the game shipped and shooting the whole thing, and yeah, it was crazy.
yeah, I remember kind of just before it was about to be announced, and you were
Yeah, yeah,
about something I can't tell you about.
yeah. When we were on Titans
Yeah,
and Kim Sue as well.
yeah,
Well, the one who murdered us
yeah. It was like
on Titans.
aura. Yeah, absolutely. So we got some questions from the audience. I just want to sprinkle some of those, and they kind of fold into my next question. We touched briefly on the difference between video game acting versus film and TV. But for you, what have you learned about yourself as a performer about the difference between these two things? Like, what did Guardians teach you? What challenges did you meet when you were, filming that? I'm sure you were learning as you went, and so I wonder if you could speak to just the differences you've learned, and also why you feel so passionate about training people specifically for space, because there is really not a lot of training available in my opinion. And I mean, I work in the acting education space.
Yeah, it's
So
tough, right? Because there really isn't. There's some specific things here and there, but you kind of really have to seek them out. It's not as available as it is for film and TV, and there's multiple big studios in Toronto, yours included, that you can go to for film and TV, but there's not a lot in terms of video games. But yeah, you're right. Like, especially on Guardians, it was kind of my first full performance, first full performance gig, and I think the biggest thing was like you can. It sounds cheesy, but you can do anything if you just dive into it and trust yourself and really just push yourself. Like I I did so much more on that, and it's hard to get into it on. I know this is a short time, but like the way these scripts were structured, because it is a choice-based game, so you've got like a branching narrative style, which is absolutely insane. I remember getting like some of the first scripts, and I was like, oh my God, what have I gotten myself into? This is not only did I have the pressure of like being in a Marvel game and one that's well known.
yeah, and the
I
lead, like
I
you're
was like, yeah, yeah. It was just kind of like, oh my God. But like, it's just in retrospect, if you just focus and trust yourself, you can do anything. You really can. Just be patient with yourself. The days were sometimes very long. Like you're kind of going to the studio, and it's almost like a 9 to 5. You're putting in a full like 8, 9 hour day, and you're acting. And I think that was the biggest challenge. Like, unlike film and TV, there's not really any stopping. There's no,
right,
they're not cutting to switch sets and to
right.
relight, and there's no lighting, there's no cameras,
There's no
there's none of that. It's just go. It's
sound.
it's just go. So like I think that was the biggest surprise for me is the amount of content I was able to actually not only learn and take in and embody, but then maintain a good level of quality as
Wow.
well.
Yeah. stamina.
Yeah, and like I was, and we were, you get exhausted by the end of those weeks sometimes if you're doing like, and it's different depending on the type of role you have, but like being in the lead, it was just, it's every day.
Yeah.
It's every single day. And it was, I don't think I was ready for it, like mentally, because I just didn't
Yeah.
know. But you know, you have to step up.
Yeah.
It's, I just kept telling myself, I was like, this is it. This is Marvel. You do not,
Yeah.
and Starla would say, don't flark it up.
Happening.
Yeah.
You go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I mean, we do have a lot of people sending in the question, and I know you can't answer this question, but there's a lot of hope for the Guardians of the Galaxy sequel, which I know you.
I honestly, I don't know. I don't. Unfortunately,
If you
it's
did know, you,
well above my pay
yeah,
grade. Unfortunately,
your,
those decisions. If the decision rested in my hands, the answer would be yes, but it does not, sadly.
um, okay, so we're going to be co-leading this workshop coming up, and I was so excited to have a workshop like this and to be able to work with you on it. And I just wanted to let folks who are joining know that we are running the workshop in kind of two categories. So there's a category for those who want to prepare an audition.
Mhm.
You will be We will send you a video game breakdown, a scene. The expectation is you will prepare it as you would for performance capture. So this is not just vocal work, performance capture audition. We'll start off the workshop by chatting, going in a bit deeper into performance capture, how that works, the technology, what the actor should expect. We'll talk a little bit about voicing and dubbing. And then, the most exciting part is you will get to perform your audition
Yeah.
for Jon, and then work directly with Jon on your audition, get some direct feedback, get a redirect, improve your work. So there's the auditioning actor way to participate, and then there is also the auditing, where anyone can sign up if you'd like to come and participate in the workshop. You'll be there in a kind of observing capacity, so you won't be auditioning, but you'll have access to all of Jon's tips, all of Jon's directing as well. So anyone can sign up to be in the observer position in the workshop. If you would like to audition, we do have some spots. There's a limited number of spots because obviously time and physics. But for that, we'll just shoot Armstrong Acting Studios. You can register. We'll need, a headshot and a bio, just to get a sense that you are already an auditioning actor. This isn't your first segue into acting. And we'll do a deep dive over 4 hours, and we'll just get into how to enhance your audition, how to have more confidence approaching the material, the difference of material, and to really give yourself permission to make some of those bigger physical choices, to really understand, what is the style of the game I'm working in? How can I pitch my voice? These kinds of things are what we're going to get into. I have some questions from the audience that
Sure.
I'd love to flip your way. We did talk about what are the differences in film and TV acting versus video games. You talked about, seeking out some specific voice training and how that gave you a competitive edge as you were breaking into the video game space, which is amazing. A question we have is what's something every beginner actor should strive for when first starting out? And I love this question. We get this, but like for you, like
Yeah.
what's your words of wisdom to the new actor?
I mean, and this isn't just video game specific. This just goes for breaking into the industry, entertainment in general. I think is for me, when I first started out, I was just throwing myself at anything and everything I can. Like I think a lot of people kind of get hell bent on, I got to get into the union or I got to do this or that. It's just I honestly I recommend focusing on just taking any work you can get. It does not have to be paid. I couldn't even tell you how many things I did for free back in the day when I was,
Right.
getting into the industry. It's really not about making money. It's about, for me, it was the love of what I was doing. When I discovered it, I was like, this is it. And I just threw myself at everything. And I was lucky that I found a kind of a crew in Ottawa where I'm from, they're just probably 8, 9 guys that were just making stuff. They're just making their own content, making their own films, short films, and I just threw myself at it, and I did as much as I possibly could, so that I would get experience on set, start learning and doing different types of roles, and kind of learning organically that way, while also taking classes, professional classes like at Armstrong, learning, the fundamentals of what it means to be, on camera for film and TV, what it means to be, shooting a video game.
Yeah.
And so you're learning in a traditional sense in class, but then you're also learning by doing. And I think learning by doing, for me anyways, is, I can't, it's been instrumental. That's how I learn best, is just by doing stuff and repetition and doing it over and over again, and seeing, in your work, what works, what doesn't,
Yeah.
and kind of learning that way. So I honestly, I encourage everyone to just throw yourself at as much stuff as you can, even if it means writing your own stuff,
Absolutely.
and just making
Yeah.
it. And we get iPhones now that you can shoot in 4K. Like, you can literally shoot.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can shoot. There's Hollywood level people who are just shooting films on iPhones for fun sometimes, like,
Yeah.
because you can.
Yeah.
It's
It's
crazy.
wildly more accessible.
Yeah.
To be able to start making your own work. I mean, the first stuff I did, I came through theater, so I went to theater school. We did not get a lot of on-camera training.
Yeah.
So I remember graduating school feeling really confident as a theater actor. And then we had a 1 week intensive on film, just long enough to make us all feel like terrible actors.
Yeah.
Like, we were like,
Yeah.
what a great out the door present. And then what I did was I worked with film students, so students of film who were wanting to make films, and I did a lot of their films. So TMU has a great film program. I was in Montreal at the time, so I was working with some guys there, and I was just, I was making it up. I was experimenting, and that really worked, and some of it, good God, really didn't.
Burn those tapes.
I wish immediately upon my move to Toronto, found a place like Armstrong, or found a coach. And I wish that I had really more specifically trained in the difference between theater and TV, because I also learned by doing, but I know that my big education in on-screen acting came through my recurring role on Being Human.
Yeah.
So as I say, some of my earliest work lives forever now on the internet.
Yeah.
But I think training, both in a studio setting, find a coach you love, find a class, because, I think there's a misconception when we're surrounded by storytelling, we're surrounded by watching actors on film, but a lot of people don't know how much technique is actually in there, or standard we're saying, right? I know when I'm teaching the master class at Armstrong, I'm sending the students whole screenplays. They have 5 days to prep like 3 scenes from a whole play. Yeah. And they're like, I'm exhausted. I'm like, well, how are you going to do 6 months as the lead if you can't read a movie over the weekend? And to find that.
Don't you think it's so interesting though that like you said on Being Human, like, that's where you actually learned.
Yeah.
But you got that opportunity, you booked that opportunity, presumably thinking, oh my God, am I even good enough to be here? Like, am I, you know what I mean? Like, we all have those moments. Like, it's incredible. And I still have those moments. Sometimes you'll show up to set and there's been somebody who's been, in the game for so long, and I'm like, oh, that's how you,
like,
you know what I mean?
I remember being on set with Gillian Anderson.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, Gillian Anderson. And just being in awe, like watching, I would just be kind of like, cool, it's not even my scene, but I just want to go watch Gillian work. Yeah. I'm just going to hover around Video Village, and they were nice enough to be like, yeah, come pull up a chair. But just the way she worked in such incredible detail, every single moment she was interrogating and she was revisiting. And she was always, working with the director to go deeper. Okay, are we going here with the story? Are we going there? A question that is coming up from our from our audience is, and this is something I wanted to circle back to. You talked about working with the director on Guardians. We do have a question as whether video game acting is a good pathway to get into video game creating, writing, and directing. I wanted to hear your thoughts on that, but also if you could speak to what it was like to work with what's the role of the director in the video game space?
Yeah, I think it's very similar. I mean, they juggle, I think, like any director does, they're also juggling other departments as well and making sure they're, there's multiple different types of directors. There's an animation director, there's the performance director. Sometimes those roles are merged like they were on Guardians. And
Right.
I mean, I don't know if I can honestly speak to whether it's a good avenue to like get into, like if you wanted to get into animation. I don't know if I don't know if it would help you or not to approach it from an acting standpoint.
Yeah.
I can tell you that I've worked with a lot of directors, and you'll hear the term like, oh, they're an actor's director. And it's just kind of like, I think I think if you're an actor first, then become director, I think that would be supremely beneficial, because then you know what it's like. You actually have that experience as an actor. You know how to approach an actor and talk to
Yeah.
them, and likely better get out of them what you need for the scene. So I think in that sense, absolutely, I think that would
Could,
be invaluable to becoming a director, because there's some directors, as you know, that just they get it.
yeah.
They know how to talk to you. They know the right questions to ask, or the right, buttons to push, so to speak, to get you to the point where they want you to be for a scene,
Yeah.
versus the ones that just, have
Yeah. Yeah.
no clue,
Yeah.
to put it nicely. Do
I
you know
think
what I mean? Like,
I do. To speak to this question, I think very similar to film and television, a lot of people imagine that the director's job is just directing the performances, working with the actors. And speaking of my experience as a theater director, directing has a huge component of technical direction as well. So in film and TV, you are working with the cinematographer, you are setting up the camera shots,
yeah,
you are imagining visual storytelling of where the
yeah,
shot. You're organizing the day, you're working with all the departments to make sure the production is happening. We're getting the shots we need this day. We're talking lenses size. We're working with the camera department. So I can only imagine that in video games, the technical skill in terms of game creation, if you are an amazing video game actor, but you also know coding and, computer science,
yeah,
that I would, and again, I'm not an expert in this, but I would think that game creation, whether it's the kind of very technical coding and construction of a game versus the storytelling of a game, I imagine there's specific training, and I know there is some specific training at University of Toronto and other
absolutely.
animation schools that really deal with that. I can only assume that those are also pathways towards.
Yeah, I think, oh, absolutely. And I think, like, it depends on what approach you're taking. If you're starting just as an actor, that's why I was saying I don't know if that will help you to get to the, like,
Yeah,
if your goal is to reach, to be a technical artist on a video game, I don't know if it's the best path.
it might
If
be.
it's if it's specifically the yeah, if it's specifically the relationship between actor and
Yeah,
performance director, I think it would be super valuable.
yeah,
Um, but then you're right. There's also the technical aspect of it, as well, which is where I think the animation director comes in. And again, those are two different roles on video games.
yeah,
And sometimes, like on Guardians, our director, Daryl is his name. He was not only the performance director, he was also the animation director. So it helped because we essentially had two people in the room at once.
yeah,
Whereas if they're separate people, you might not always get the animation director there, and they'll tell you like, oh, I don't think you can move your body that way. I don't think we'll
yeah,
be able to, like, because they still have to stitch it together. They still have to make this look lifelike,
yeah.
in engine, and some things will work, some things will not. Um, so it's, yeah, I think if you have a granular relationship between just from actor to director, yes, I think it could be extremely valuable to you. I don't know if your final destination or goal of something on the, development side, I don't know. I'm not the right person to ask. You'd actually have to ask.
Yeah, we're just actors.
We're just actors. I will say to your point though, like in terms of research, like it helped me a lot, and I'm not a coder, I'm not an engineer, I'm none of those things, but what I am is a big fan and I'll call it a student of video games. I've played a lot of video games. I love them so much, and knowing how video games worked for me
Yeah,
paid off in the room because I was able to self-direct or
yeah,
bring ideas to the table of
yeah.
like what we could do in the scene to make it work, just because I know these things are possible in video games. It's just a matter of if they'll work in your video game or not. So I think again, it's the research and the knowledge, and for me, the love of this medium, that it does help.
Absolutely. I think that goes back to your earlier point about know what skills you need and know the research you need to do. And this is not specific to video games, but even as an actor, I say if you want to be working in action, have you learned stunts? Have you learned combat? Do you know martial arts? Do you want to be working in certain genres? Can you ride a horse? Can you drive? Can you take a stunt driving
Yeah.
class? Like if those are your dreams, right? To be Irma Thurman in Kill Bill, like, okay, then go get those auxiliary skills, right? So I think having that research, knowing what is possible in a genre, knowing what is trending in that genre at any time, what's on TV, what are people watching, what's being made is going to help you as an actor. We do have a technical question where someone's saying, where can I find castings for Netflix? So I'll jump in here and just say, Jon was talking about when you're starting out, working on any project you can, right? So we often have this big divide between union work and non-union work. So anyone can make a non-union project. I will say from myself, I always say, yes, it's good to get experience, but yes, you also need to be discerning when you're approaching non-union work, because the one thing I can say is that work, that set, those hours they do not have to abide by kind of standardized safety protocols, time, labor rules, these kinds of things. So definitely I'll always say with discernment, feel safe, make sure you feel taken care of.
Yourself.
Check yourself, ask the questions you need to understand what's the project you're working on, how are you going to be paid, are you going to be paid, how is that all going to be work, how's that going to be taken care of. For a company like Netflix or for a major streaming network or platform of any kind, they are going to be using unionized sets, and they're going to be having to follow the actor union rules, the SAG union rules, whether it's American, Canadian, a co-production. So to access those opportunities, you're going to need to have an agent representation who is the bridge between the casting directors who are being hired by the projects that need actors. They hire the casting director. The casting director has relationships with agents all over the city. The agents rep actors. So it's this kind of chain. This chain of events. But to access those union projects that are casting, those are going to be going through casting directors, and you need an agent to access those opportunities for sure. And we'll often do a live, or we have, if you're interested about how to get an agent, how to start out in that kind of business side of things, you can absolutely contact us at Armstrong. We'll be happy to hop on a call with you and talk about that process, because it's its own thing and it has its own set of materials that are needed. But that is definitely if you want to be working in the major streaming services as a professional actor. So oh my gosh, we could talk about, I feel
forever.
So we definitely want to.
God, it's Friday already. What happened?
We've been talking for 7 days, hours and hours. We've been in the volume. I'm so excited to jump into the workshop and touch on all these topics again. So for folks who have enjoyed today, are curious to learn more, or if you're curious to work specifically with Jon, if you've been auditioning for video games and it's not landing, if you'd like to push to get being seen for games and you want to have some more confidence on how to approach those auditions, this is the workshop for you. July 30th. It's going to be 4 hours. We will jump in, dive in. We'll be rolling around in imaginary worlds. We have not selected the material yet, but I'm very excited for giving our actors some juicy scenes to be working on. And if you would like to register for either the observation spot or to actually audition and receive direct feedback, be in touch with Armstrong, and we look forward to working with you. Are there any sort of parting words, Jon, you'd love to share with folks today about acting or getting involved or anything?
I'm just excited. I'm excited to meet you guys in class. If you're here, it's because you're passionate about video games, about acting, and just keep doing it. Keep immersing yourself in the craft, as they say, and stick with it. It's a long journey, but it certainly pays off, and it's well worth it. And I'm excited to help in class if I can.
Absolutely. Okay, thank you so much, Jon, for joining me today and
Thank you.
Can't wait to carry it on in the workshop. And for everyone who tuned in, hopefully we will see you in the workshop. And I'm just so excited to jump into these genres. And if not, I will see you in the studio in one of our summer term classes. All right, ciao.
Awesome. Bye, everyone.